HVAC 360, episode number 54, AHR Expo. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of HVAC 360. I'm your host, Matt Nelson. We cover all topics HVAC, and this week we're going to dive into the AHR Expo, which is kind of, unique in the United States. We're going to be talking to Clay Stevens. He's the president of the International Exposition Company. Don't know what that is? Well, soon you'll find out. I just want to go through, and I know I've been away for a couple of months, but been taking the holidays off, and knowing that the AHR Expo is right around the corner for the HVAC world, I'm going to get back into it. We're going to start this off with Clay, and we're going to, by the time you're listening to it, it's going to be tomorrow is going to be the AHR Expo. So this is the Sunday before the Expo opens, and I'm going to have a couple more interviews that'll be coming your way from some of the vendors that are going to be at the show. So hope you enjoy my talk with Clay, and here we go. All right, today we're talking with Clay Stevens, president of the International Exposition Company. How are you doing today, Clay?
I'm doing just fine.
Excellent. Now, obviously, the day this is going to be posted, it's the AHR Expo starts tomorrow. So, I just want to kind of bring up a couple of things, ask you a few questions, and figure out, for somebody who doesn't really know, what's AHR? AHR. What is the AHR Expo? What does that stand for?
Well, the AHR is air conditioning, heating, and refrigerating or refrigeration. But the show has become a lot more than that. We just picked that as an acronym because it's easy to say. The official name of the show is the International Air Conditioning, Heating, Refrigerating Exposition. And that's kind of a mouthful, so it's been simplified down to AHR Expo.
Excellent. So now, the International Exposition Company, how does that? Can you explain a little bit about how that works and how this kind of goes together with the AHR? Okay.
The show was actually started in 1930 by International Exposition Company, and the company had its 100th anniversary last year. So we were started in 1911. We managed, in our period of time, have managed a lot of different shows, and now we produce and manage the AHR Expo and a couple of others. But the main one is AHR Expo.
Now, this is a pretty big deal to pull off an expo like this. I mean, how does one go about doing that? I mean, what's involved?
Well, I guess the very first step is to reserve space in the convention center, and that now is starting to take place many, many years. I have space already set aside in 2027. So there's a lot of way advanced planning. The specific planning for the details of a show normally start about 2 years out from the date of the show. And we need to lay out the space. We need to sell the space. We need to promote attendance at the show. We wear a lot of different hats. We become security people. We become travel people. We become bus transportation people. There's no end to the number of hats that we wear.
Wow, that seems gigantic. I just think about the Olympics being every 4 years and being a big deal. This is every year, and then you have to kind of you've planned out 15 ahead of time, and you're planning one and working. You have a lot of balls in the air at the same time, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, there will be somewhere between 50 and 60,000 people that we bring into Dallas.
Wow. So tell me, what's the link? I mean, obviously, just so if people don't know, typically what happens is that the ASHRAE winter meeting typically kind of coincides, actually precedes, and then kind of coincides a little bit with the AHR Expo. Typically, the ASHRAE show starts on like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is the show itself. So, but what's the link between the AHR and ASHRAE? Does that go all the way back to 1930?
It does. Of course, it wasn't called ASHRAE then. It was, oh my goodness,
like ASHV, or it was
ASHVE, I think is what it was called then. And the show was, the wording used was under the auspices of ASHRAE or ASHV back then. And it has been in conjunction with ASHRAE ever since then. They had become our official sponsor, and we have an agreement with them whereby they sponsor the show. And then in 1972, what was then ARI joined us as a co-sponsor with ASHRAE, and the show went from being held every other year to being held every year.
Wow. Yeah, I know. And talking with obviously talking with the people at ASHRAE, the show is a big deal to them. I mean, it is a major portion of their budget for the year, and they really kind of depend on the success of the show to be able to do the kinds of great things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, we work very well together. So that's an arrangement that helps everybody.
Now, I think talking, across the United States, this is the biggest show, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if
we believe that it is the biggest show in the world that is specifically heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, and ventilation. There are other shows that are bigger, but they include more sanitary, showers, sinks, tubs, that kind of thing.
Right.
Plumbing.
Yeah. I know that in talking with other people. I mean, obviously there's international shows that go on for weeks, and that's kind of out of the scope of this. But that's just there are other shows, but again, like you said, they encompass like a wide range of just about everything. This one's kind of narrowly focused on the HVAC industry and and what you can bring. So I mean. So I guess now locations. This show just can't be held just anywhere. Are there specific locations that it's held at? I mean, you plan 15 years ahead of time, but where can people typically find these?
We have a regular rotation because no matter where the show is held, there is a concentration of people that come from the local area. Our show brings people from all over the world, but it also brings a great number of people from Texas in this particular show. So there's always a huge bump in attendance from the local area. So our strategy is to always rotate the show around the country and have an attendance that's fresh. So in Dallas, there'll probably be 10,000 to 15,000 people that have never been to the show before, because it's on a 6-year rotation.
Okay.
In Dallas, and there is a pattern that we would go from northeast to southeast to west to Midwest, which is Chicago, to southwest, which is Dallas.
Okay, so I know the ones I've been to Orlando, I've been to New York, I've been to Chicago, Dallas is one. What are the ones out west?
The only one you missed is Western, and that is Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas, yes. I've been to that one too.
We used to be in San Francisco and Anaheim and Los Angeles, but we no longer fit in those places.
Okay.
So the places we go, specifically the places we go, is limited by size now. We're just too big for a lot of places.
Okay. All right. So once every 6 years, it's in one of those 5 places?
Once every 6 years, except for Chicago, which is once every 3 years.
Oh, it doubles up on Chicago. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I get it. I'm like, wait a minute, that's 5. How is it 6 year
not
rotation
enough
goes
places.
So, okay, excellent. Now, I guess, so tell me a little bit about the evolution. How do shows change from year to year?
Okay. Well, certainly the technology changes. Certainly what's on display changes radically. The internet has changed our show a lot because we're able to put out information in advance of the show. We're able to reach a lot more people. People can do searches, product searches, and company searches, and now they can search for educational material that they want to see. There's a lot of advanced planning that can be done on the internet. As I said, the technology at the shows changes a lot. The building automation has become, a big thing at the show. Where during the early shows, you were talking about actually wood burning stoves, and when furnaces first became self-starting, and the old coal burners would operate automatically, that was a big deal. And now it's much more technology, much more electronics.
So now evolving, obviously, it's going to become a lot, with technology changing at a more and more rapid pace. I imagine that the show's going to change, but mostly the evolution comes from most of the people who the vendors, you would say. We've kind of updated the show a little bit, as far as how it's structured, or but typically a lot of the change is coming from the vendors. Is that adequate?
That's correct, and it's still the face-to-face contact, being able to see a piece of equipment operate, being able to touch it and see if it's made out of steel or it's made out of tin, to network with people. To just basically see what's new.
Yeah. Now, I guess at least from my experience, and I know I've talked to a number of manufacturers' representatives, they also kind of use it as, if they're going to touch base with each other one time a year, they're all going to go to the expo, and they have sort of like, off to the side, kind of outside the show, but they'll have workshops and things like that for the sales staff. So at least for the vendors, a lot of them get together just for that purpose alone. Right.
It's a huge meeting place, no question about it. There's a lot of networking that goes on, and it's pretty helpful to have one place during the year that everybody gets together.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess what can you tell me about what's special about this year? What do you have that any like announcements, anything different or new that's coming out?
Well, again, it's an electronic thing. And a lot of people are coming out with apps, so it isn't quite so spectacular anymore. But we do have a show app this year that we haven't had before, that allows visitors, when they're at the show, to be able to search for pretty much anything. They can search for an educational session. They can search for a new product that they're interested in. They can search through general product categories, set themselves up an itinerary to go through the show. But mostly the new thing about the show is what's on display. Mm-hmm. That's why people come.
Yeah, the AHR Expo app. I have it. I've played with it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of comprehensive. Because typically, and again, for anybody who hasn't been to the show, your typical stop would be, right when you get to the show, you're going to pick up, like this thick, handbook. It's not a full-size book; it's like a half-size book, but it's really thick. It'll have, all the the vendors, all the people on display, that kind of information. It'll have all these things. Now you can have an app where you can just search through it. You have your floor plan there. You can search through that. You can actually look at speakers by, if you want to I just actually did that yesterday. I looked through the speakers. And I'm like, oh, I recognize this one. I picked that, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know she was talking. So I know that I've earmarked her to go see her at the show. But even from like QR code reader, that's kind of an interesting thing that's on there. And also, I see that for anybody who's more progressive into the new media, they have a Twitter feed that's
yes, we do.
That's being pulled down. So you can anybody who's tweeting out on the floor or is going to the show have some helpful tips. You can see that on there as well.
And of course, that'll be going on during the show as well. So.
Now, so I guess what are some of the other? I mean, obviously, either get the book, get the app, whatever you're going to do. What are some of the helpful tips that people can that might help people out get the most out of a show?
Well, there is also a website if it's especially if you want to do some advanced planning. If you go to our website and click on there's a section called Map Your Show, and you go into that, and you can do a lot of the same things that you can do with the app, but it does also allow you to create a personal agenda, and that could be really helpful. The show has almost 2,000 companies showing in it now, and I think I had asked our contractor how much carpeting they lay down in the aisles. Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be almost 8 miles in Chicago.
Wow!
So there's just too much ground to cover if you just do it randomly. So I would suggest that people do some advanced planning, and you can actually create an itinerary that will take you from space to space, aisle to aisle, without wandering randomly. You can cover the people that you want to see, and do it in a way that's as quick and direct as you possibly can.
Yeah, no, I would understand that. I mean, you walk the show, you stop and look at something. You can't do that too many times before you run out of daylight. So
that's so true.
But and obviously, the show, when you look at the maps and things like that, there are some things that if you're interested in just controls, there are certain groups of, you try to group vendors, I guess, in some cases. How does
yes.
that? What kind of groups do you have that?
What we have done is picked a couple of groups that don't overlap a lot with other groups, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of manufacturers in our industry do more than one thing, so it's a little tough to, if you wanted to say, for the sake of argument, have a heating section. Half of those people also make air conditioning, and half of them also make ventilation products. And so it doesn't lend itself very well. However, there are a couple of areas that we set aside that are very specific, and one of them is automation and controls. So we have an automation and controls section with over 100 companies in it, and that makes it a little easier to find those types of people where we have them all in one place. We also have what we call a software center, and that has all different kinds of software that's specifically related to our industry.
Now, I guess those aren't the only types of groups by type of, by product. You also have different countries represented. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, we have a few pavilions. We have a lot of international countries, a lot of international exhibitors. As a matter of fact, there are over 400 companies from outside the U.S. There is a China, I hate to call it a China pavilion because in one case it's a pavilion and in another case it's groups of Chinese companies that are scattered around. So there's one from Korea. There is that one that you mentioned earlier from South America. And that's pretty much it. a lot of the international companies are scattered around.
Right. And, I mean, some of these, you got to realize not everybody, not all the vendors are necessarily, what they make is complete parts or, complete equipment. Some of them just sell, dampers. Some of them just sell, like belts. Some of them just sell, just
the components.
widgets.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's interesting to be able to talk to those people and figure out exactly how that's made. So,
yeah, it's everything from soup to nuts, really. We have people that are showing capacitors and ceramic igniters and little parts like that, and vibration mountings and things, and then others that are showing rooftop units and cooling towers and complete units of all sorts.
Right, and that's kind of one of the things that I like, about it. It's kind of like, when you go to the show, you go with some intent of exactly what vendors to hit, and I like to look at some of the actual. I think you mentioned it before. Some of the cutaways, they have pump cutaways to actually see how the inner workings of a pump work. Some of they have really nice demonstrations about how their products work. You get hands-on and you get to talk to the experts. I mean, these are the guys that really know their stuff. So if you have a particular problem that about heat exchangers, exactly, what's the sequence around heat exchangers and how, how do you work that? Well, these are the people to ask because, they are the experts, and they would just make their day to be able to, help somebody out like that, and, not only help them but help you. So, have a list of questions, to go along with it, because it's really your opportunity.
Right. We tell people if they bring their specs for a particular problem or a project that they have, some of the best minds in the industry will be there to help them come up with a solution.
Absolutely.
And they will take time with them, and really there's no better way to do it. You might not find you won't be able to meet face to face, obviously, with different providers to get answers from them in any other way than at the show. They're all there.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I just have to point out, because it was one of those things that kind of amazed me when I went. Here I was expecting, I'm like, okay, well, this is the AHR Expo. I would expect the first thing I see would, be like a carrier or a train, those people on display. But when I went, the last couple of times I've went, that's not the type. You don't see necessarily the biggest. And I don't know if you want to talk to that. I could discuss it a little bit, but that was kind of one of the things that you're like, why don't you see those kind of companies?
Well, actually, they come and they go. I mean, they choose certain shows to go into, and others they don't. This particular time, Train is in this show. Carrier's in it.
No.
But there are a lot of other companies that are not names you would necessarily recognize that are providing some excellent products. And a lot of them are coming from overseas, not necessarily China, but the exhibitors actually represent 34 different countries. So it's not just China and Korea and Argentina, but it's stuff from everywhere, from Israel, from Middle East, other Middle Eastern countries, from Australia, from Austria. They're just coming from everywhere.
Right.
And how would you ever? They're coming to you. You wouldn't get on a plane to go to Australia to see a product, probably.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And when I did ask that question, the answer came back to me. Well, it allows space for other vendors who may not necessarily able to get space at the expo. So you're going to actually see, instead of fewer larger, you're going to see more of the smaller vendors, which actually is a benefit to everybody who attends. So
absolutely. I mean, when you have 2,000, almost 2,000. Companies all in the same industry grouping, you're going to have practically everybody there, big and small.
All right. Well, do you have any last words? Anything else that we didn't cover?
Well, I would just want to reiterate how important it is to plan and to plan in advance, because a random visit to the show would not be nearly as productive as it would to have at least a pretty good idea of who you want to see and where they're located in advance.
Excellent. And if they wanted to do that, where would they go to? The AHRexpo.com? Is that?
Yes, that's what I would recommend, as long as they're near a computer, and then I would say get the app once you get there.
Absolutely, or even before.
Or even before.
Yeah, it's a good app. So, well, I think that would be pretty much it. I appreciate you having taken some time out of your busy schedule to sit down and chat with us. It's a great learning experience about the AHR Expo and a little bit about its history and some of the details. So I appreciate that, Clay.
Well, my pleasure.
All right, and we're back. Thanks again. A big thanks to Clay Stevens, who is given some of his time to discuss with us the AHR Expo. I think it's one of those fascinating things that this gets pulled off every year, and it's just this humongous event. But they're doing it for us. Get out there, attend the event. Again, there's a lot of things. It's not just the vendors. There's plenty of places to go as far as just sessions, a lot of educational sessions, full day seminars take place concurrently with the AHR Expo. So there, you can kind of make it a two birds with one stone kind of trip. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for hanging in there. Hope I didn't alienate too many of you. And I appreciate you listening. You are the top 3% of the industry. Thank you for listening. If you want to have any comments about the show, give me some feedback. You can hit me at matt@buildingx.co, or you can visit the website buildingx.co, or if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I am Matt Nelson PE. If you want to Twitter back and forth, I check that a little bit more now that the HR Expo is upon us, but that's @buildingx is my Twitter handle. So if you want to chime into that, if you just want to find out when the next show is coming on, you can actually go to buildingx.co and sign up for the newsletter, and I will get those out to you as best I can. So without any further ado, I'd like to let you get back to what you were doing before. Again, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be able to do these things for you. And I hope you get some education out of them. So until next time, remember, know what you build and share what you know.